Starting university felt a lot like my old school, with its own share of ghost stories and strange happenings. Here are 3 intriguing tales from students about the eerie experiences they had during their college years. The first story is called The Haunted Night Run.
I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get spooked by a night jog, but that's exactly what happened to me and my friends, Jiro and Des, back in college. It all started in the early 2000s when we decided to change up our routine. We were all in our 3rd year at a big university, and the campus was covered with green grass and huge trees. We figured a night jog would be a great way to stay fit and enjoy the campus after dark. We'd been jogging every evening for a week, and it was becoming a nice routine. The cool night air was refreshing and the quiet campus felt peaceful. But one night, things took a turn for the creepy. We were running along our usual route, which took us through a particularly dark and wooded part of the campus. The trees were thick, and the path was dimly lit by street lamps far apart from each other. It was a bit eerie, but we were used to it. Jiro, Des, and I chatted as we ran, our breaths visible in the cool air. That night, we had been running for about 20 minutes when I heard something strange. I was lagging a little behind Jiro and Des, and suddenly I heard Des call out behind me.
Jiro, wait up!
I looked ahead and saw Jiro and Des running together, chatting like usual. I was puzzled. If Des was calling out to Jiro, then why were they both in front of me? I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one there, just the dark, empty path behind me. I picked up my pace, trying to catch up with them. Hey, what's going on? I called out, but they didn't seem to hear me. As I ran faster, I heard the same voice again, this time clearer and more urgent.
Jiro, wait up!
My heart started pounding. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine and glanced behind me once more. The darkness seemed to close in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Panic set in. I sprinted, trying to catch up to Jiro and Des, but it felt like I was running in slow motion. I screamed for them, my voice echoing through the empty path. My legs were burning, but fear pushed me to run even faster. As I reached Jiro and Des, they looked at me with confused faces.
Ellie, why are you yelling?
Jiro asked. I heard someone calling from behind us. I gasped, still catching my breath. It sounded just like Des, but you guys were in front of me. Des and Jiro exchanged worried glances. Des said,
There's nothing back there.
Though she didn't sound too sure. But I knew what I heard. The voice was too clear. Too real. As we continued our jog, the eerie feeling didn't leave me. We made our way back to the dorm, and I couldn't shake the image of the dark, whispering path behind us. The next day, I decided to ask around about any strange occurrences on campus. A few students mentioned that there had been sightings and apparitions in the wooded area we had been running through. Some even said that people who jogged there at night sometimes heard voices or felt an unsettling presence. I told Jiro and Des about the stories I'd heard. They listened, looking as spooked as I felt. We all agreed that maybe it was time to change our jogging route, or better yet, stick to daytime runs. To this day, I can't jog through that part of the campus without feeling a chill. Every time I hear a voice behind me or see shadows moving in the dark, I remember that night and the eerie whisper that left me running for my life. It's a reminder that sometimes, the scariest things are the ones we can't see but can definitely feel.
The next story is called The NeverEnding Staircase.
It was supposed to be just another evening class at the university, but for me, it turned into a nightmarish ordeal. The old building where my class was held had 3 floors, and I'd always found the stairs to be a bit worn, but nothing unusual. But that night, something felt off. I had left my dorm a bit late and rushed to the old building, hoping I wasn't too late. I was a bit frustrated with myself because I had dozed off in my room earlier, and now I was running late with my class on the 3rd floor. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed the eerie silence. The usually bustling hallways were empty. I thought nothing of it at first. Maybe everyone else was already in class. The 1st floor seemed normal, but as I climbed to the 2nd, I started to feel uneasy. The silence was heavy, almost oppressive. I reached the 2nd floor and noticed it was deserted, just like the 1st. No students, no noise, just the quiet creak of the old wooden steps. I pushed on, reaching for the 3rd floor. But when I got there, it felt like I hadn't moved at all. It felt like I was still in the 2nd floor, if that made sense. The same dark, empty hall stretched out before me. Confused and a bit scared, I turned and started climbing again. But no matter how many floors I climbed, the top floor never seemed to get any closer. Each time I reached a new floor, I saw the same young girl standing from a distance. She had a pale face and wore a plain white dress. She stared at me with sad, hollow eyes. I ignored her, thinking it was just my imagination, and headed up to the next floor. But every time I reached the next level, she was there again, her expression unchanged. Panic started to set in. I ran up and down the stairs trying to find an exit, but it was as if I was trapped in an endless loop. The silence around me was deafening, and the only thing that seemed real was the girl and her empty gaze. I felt like I was losing my mind. In my desperation, I pulled out my rosary from my bag. My grandmother had given it to me for protection, and I hoped it would help. I clutched it tightly and started to pray, my voice trembling. I begged for help, for someone to make sense of this nightmare. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling sound. It was as if the world was coming back to life. The silence broke, and I could hear the murmur of students, the distant chirping of birds, and the normal sounds of the evening. The girl was gone, and the stairwell felt like it was finally part of the real world again. I hurried out of the building, my heart still racing. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Back in my dorm, I decided to post about my experience on the students' online community. I needed to share what I had been through. To my surprise, I wasn't the only one who had encountered something strange. Several students replied to my post, sharing similar stories. One of them mentioned an old university legend. To avoid getting trapped in the infinite staircase, you had to wave to the girl and acknowledge her presence. It was a way to show respect and avoid the misfortune of being stuck in the loop. I was relieved to know that I wasn't alone. I felt a bit more at ease knowing there was an explanation, even if it was unsettling. The old building was just as silent as before, but now I knew what to do. The memory of that night stayed with me, a haunting reminder of how strange and mysterious the world could be.
The last story is called The Restless Spirit in the Mortuary.
When I decided to go to medical school, my father sat me down and told me a story from his own med school days that he said I should never forget. He went to a university in Manila in the 1980s and was always staying late nights at the mortuary with his friends. They were dedicated to their studies, often working on cadavers to learn as much as they could. One night, as the group huddled around a cadaver studying for their upcoming exams, they heard something strange. At first, it was just a soft whisper, barely noticeable over the hum of the fluorescent lights. But as the night went on, the whispers grew louder, turning into a voice that pleaded for help. Annette was the first to notice.
Did you guys hear that?
She stopped her work and looked around the room. Marty and Alicia exchanged worried glances, and my father felt a chill run down his spine.
Hear what?
Marty asked, trying to sound brave.
It sounds like someone is asking for help.
The group fell silent, straining their ears. There it was again, a soft, ghostly voice, pleading.
Please stop. I'm so tired of all the cutting.
Alicia gasped, dropping her scalpel. The friends gathered around the body, their hearts pounding. The voice continued to plead, growing more desperate.
Bury me. It's been so many years. Please let me rest.
My father's hands were shaking as he placed them on the cold, lifeless body. He asked, looking at his friends for guidance.
What do we do?
We have to help him. We can't just ignore this.
Annetta said firmly. The next day, they decided to approach their professor, Dr. Garcia, a man who was known for his stern demeanor but also for his fairness. Annette mustered up the courage to speak to him after class.
Dr. Garcia, we need to talk to you about something. It's about one of the cadavers in the mortuary.
Dr. Garcia raised an eyebrow.
What about it?
Annetta took a deep breath and recounted the events of the previous night. As she spoke, she watched Dr. Garcia's expression change from skepticism to something that looked like sorrow. When she finished, Dr. Garcia was silent for a long moment. Finally, he sighed.
The cadaver you're talking about belongs to a man named Emilio. He was a friend of mine. He donated his body to science, knowing it would help many students like yourselves. But perhaps, after all these years, it's time to give him the rest he deserves.
Dr. Garcia arranged for Emilio's body to be given a proper burial. The friends attended the small, somber ceremony, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, my father couldn't help but think about how Emilio had helped so many students, even after death. The whispers and strange disturbances in the mortuary stopped after that. The friends continued their studies, but the memory of that night stayed with them. They often talked about it, wondering about the mysteries of life and death, and the fine line between the two. Now, as I walk the same halls my father did, I think about that story. It's a reminder that medicine isn't just about science and learning. It's about respect and understanding, even for those who have passed on. And maybe, just maybe, it's about listening to the whispers that remind us of our humanity. My father's story has taught me to approach my studies with a deeper sense of compassion and respect. Every time I enter the mortuary, I remember Emilio and the ghostly plea that changed my father's perspective on life and death.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Remember, some mysteries are best left undisturbed.